This happened to a close friend and a housemate of mine whilst at university. I'll call her Laura for the purposes of this story. We were in our second year of university, and while it's typical to move out of halls and into a house during the second year, for financial reasons, we both decided to apply to stay in our halls of residence again. We attended the University of York in the UK, and chose the college just behind the library, due to the ensuite bathrooms and the close location to Heslington West, where all of our lectures were held. The halls were 3 floors high, with 10 people living on each floor, and everyone seemed pretty nice there. Everyone had a keycard, which you had to use to access the main building, and again to access your floor. Only the keycard specific to that floor would work though. And the only other way to access the building was if you rang the buzzer and someone physically came and opened the door. If you lost your keycard, you had to report it to the porter, and it would be instantly cancelled, so it no longer worked, and you would have to be issued a new one. Now that I've described our living situation, I'll proceed with the story. The term started off normally enough. My friend and I were both on the same course, genetics, and we attended our lectures, unless we were too hungover, of course. Did society stuff, went to the library, and all that stuff. We were a fan of midnight library trips, and one day we came back from the library around 2 a.m. We buzzed ourselves in, went into the lift to the second floor, and headed to our respective rooms to sleep. I was brushing my teeth, maybe 5 minutes later, and there was a knock on my door. I answered it, and Laura came in with a confused expression and asked me to come over to her room with her. I followed her, and she went over to her desk and picked up an origami swan. She swore that she hadn't made it, and that it hadn't been here before the library trip. She asked me if I'd put it there at any point, but I'd never seen it before. While we used cards to buzz ourselves through the door system, we unlocked our personal rooms with a key. I asked her if she locked her room before going out, and she insisted that she had. I told her that she must have just forgotten and left it unlocked accidentally, and that it would just be one of our housemates prating around. It's not uncommon for people to prank each other at uni. During my first year, a housemate left his room unlocked, so we went in and wrapped all his stuff in tinfoil and cling film. Laura was still looking a bit worried, however, but I told her not to worry, and she agreed that a paper swan was innocent enough, so she let it go and we just both went to bed. Around a week and a half passed, and we were busy with uni, so we'd pretty much forgotten about the weird origami swan incident. In this time, Laura had asked all our housemates about it, but none of them owned up, so we decided that it was definitely a housemate messing around, but not wanting to admit it was them. One day, we had a gap between our morning lectures and our laboratory session in the afternoon, so we came home to make some lunch. I was making a sandwich in the kitchen, chatting with a couple of our housemates, and Laura came in. She was carrying another origami swan and a ribbon. She said that the ribbon had been around her door handle, and that the swan had been on her desk again. At this time, I knew that she'd locked her door as we headed out to our 9 a.m. lecture together that morning, and I'd seen her do it, in fact. I was a bit confused, but I still insisted that it had to be one of our housemates messing around, because no one else could get in that corridor due to the door card system. Laura agreed with me, but was concerned because she knew that she'd lost her key whilst drunk during Freshers' Week. I hadn't known this at the time, but apparently a few days into term, we'd been on a night out at the club, and the next morning Laura hadn't been able to find her key. She said that she'd figured she must have lost it in the club somewhere, and had immediately gone to the porters and paid the fine to collect the new key. They told her to just hand in the missing one if it ever turned up. So now, Laura was thinking that maybe one of her housemates had the key, had realised that it unlocked Laura's room, because our keys had our room numbers on them, and was putting stuff in there as a practical joke or something. Laura, however, didn't see the funny side of someone going into her room and thought it was a bit too weird and specific to be a practical joke. She decided to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, though, and took a picture of the swan and posted it on Facebook in our house group chat, saying, "Nice swan, LOL, thanks guys. I'd appreciate if you'd stopped going in my room now, though." But they didn't stop going in her room. Over the next few weeks, whoever kept entering her room did so more frequently. They'd still leave the weird-ass swans, but other things started happening too. For example, Laura would leave her laptop in a certain place on her desk, but when she came back, it would be on a pillow, and the clothes in her wardrobe would be rearranged, and books would be left out that she hadn't been reading. Again, it was nothing particularly sinister, but it was really freaking Laura out now, and she was beginning to doubt herself. She'd often say that maybe she really had left her laptop on her pillow, and that she was just worrying because of the swan thing. In fact, it got to the point where she'd made me look at her room before we left for lectures, and had me watch her physically lock the door. But Laura wasn't losing it. Things were really moving around her room while she was gone, and someone was definitely going in there. This time, I posted a massive rant about it on Facebook chat. All of our housemates absolutely swore it wasn't them, and that they'd keep an eye out. And honestly, none of them gave a particularly creepy vibe, and they all did seem fairly genuine about it. However, we knew that it had to be one of our housemates, or a friend or partner that someone was letting into the building, as there was just no way at all of entering without one of those active keycards. This went on for a few more weeks, and eventually I urged her to tell campus security what had been going on when the weird swan-leaving, laptop-moving person didn't let up. There are no security cameras inside the building, only on the door at the entrance, but they said that they would keep a close eye and that they would increase their car patrols around our area of college. Laura thanked them, but she wasn't convinced that this would help much, seeing as she was convinced it was someone inside the house. She also informed the college provost, the guy who oversees things like student welfare and disciplinaries, and individually all 30 people in that block were called in to talk to him to see if anyone knew anything. Nothing came of it, but Laura was glad that the university was taking the situation seriously. But now is when things started to get really creepy. The person was still moving things around her room and was leaving the occasional paper swan, but now they also started leaving notes. It started out with short notes on her pillow, such as "You're pretty," but soon turned into full-blown letters detailing how this person had been watching Laura since the beginning of term, how much they liked her, and how they knew that she liked them too because she always accepted the gifts. And naturally, Laura was seriously distressed by this point. She even considered moving out and staying somewhere else, and she ended up going to Open Doors, the on-campus university counseling services, because she had severe anxiety and paranoia. In fact, it got to the point where she rarely left her room, and the only person she would allow to enter was me. She stopped going to lectures and to all the things she enjoyed, because she said that she felt like she could feel eyes on her all the time, and was genuinely terrified that someone might follow her and do something. If she had to go anywhere alone for any reason, she'd call me to come and meet her. She spent a lot of her time crying, and she was even struggling to complete essays and keep up with the university stuff. I told her to keep all the letters though, but she didn't want them in her room, so I looked after them and gave them to the provost, who ended up getting the police involved. Again, the police questioned us all, but nothing came of it. Finally, though, the university offered to change her door and have a new lock fitted, something they should have done in the first place, but the uni bedrooms are all heavy-duty fire doors, and apparently they're just super expensive. So she had her new lock fitted, but the letters, they didn't stop. Instead, they just ended up getting pushed under her door when she was out. They became more and more graphic and sexual in nature, with them stating in great detail exactly what their life together would be like and what they do in the bedroom. We were well into the second term by this point, and Laura, well, she was really struggling to cope. She deleted all her social media accounts, and she'd failed on a couple of assignments due to stress. But Laura was desperate not to quit as she wanted to do well at her degree, and she didn't want to let anyone down. We were still no closer to knowing who it was, however, and the only comforting thing was the fact that this person couldn't use the missing key to access her room anymore. Anyway, the letters continued, and finally, a letter came asking her to meet up. The person asked Laura to meet at 11 p.m. near Central Hall. In general, your campus is pretty well lit, and it's pretty safe due to the security patrols, with very few incidences taking place. Central Hall, however, was one area of campus which really wasn't well lit, and was in fact pretty dark. What's more, the entrance of Central Hall doesn't have any security cameras. So basically, this person had asked to meet Laura in a dark area of campus with no security. Obviously, Laura didn't attend the 11 p.m. date, and instead reported it to campus security. Security did check the area out, but no one ever turned up. After that, she received a letter asking her to meet up, most days in fact. And by this point, Laura was at breaking point. She phoned her mum and admitted what had been going on for the past few months. She'd never told her family as she didn't want them to worry, and because they'd never actually done anything physical to her, she didn't have much to go on anyway. Her mum, who lived about 1.5 hours away by car, insisted that she was driving up the next day to talk to the college provost about the situation, and told Laura that under no circumstances she would be staying in those halls. Eventually, Laura agreed to a medical leave of absence, stating depression and anxiety as the cause, due to come back the following academic year. As September drew near, she made the decision not to come back. Through text, she told me nothing weird at all had happened since she'd been back home, but that she felt too afraid to come back to York, and that she was still experiencing bad anxiety whenever she left the house. I have seen Laura since, and though she's doing okay now, the whole situation will be with her for life. After the whole situation with Laura, no one else in our flat was ever targeted and nothing odd happened, but I pretty much avoided all of our housemates, knowing that one of them, or someone close to them, had to be responsible for stalking Laura and causing the deterioration of her mental health. We still, genuinely, have no idea who was responsible for any of it, and I guess now we will never know. But it's really creepy to think about the fact that someone I know, someone who I could be friends with, is an obsessive stalker.